In April of 2018, an unidentified woman was found beaten to death in an abandoned cul-de-sac in East Point, Florida, in an area known as the Forgotten Coast. Her injuries were so horrific that even seasoned investigators were shocked by what they saw. Within 24 hours of the discovery, police received a call about a bloody motel room in the same Gulf Coast town. Detectives identified the murder victim as 31-year-old Miami resident Eileen Seiden and traced the motel room to her boyfriend, Zachary Abel, and his other girlfriend, Christina Aro. Seiden and Abel had initially seen each other in secret behind Arajo's back. When Arajo found out, she suggested being in a three-way relationship as an alternative to breaking up with Abel. They agreed to give it a trial run, and the arrangement quickly became plagued by jealousy and drama. Several days before Seiden's death, she and Abel went on a road trip without Arajo, who bombarded the pair with text messages threatening physical violence. After the fight calmed down, Arajo joined the two on their travels. After Seiden's murder, Abel and Arajo pointed the finger at each other, with Abel accusing Arajo of murdering Seiden. In a jealous rage, Arajo admitted to participating in the fatal beating, but claimed that Abel had attacked Seiden out of nowhere in an alcohol-fueled rage, and that she tried to stop him from killing the victim. Arajo pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 25 years in prison. In exchange for her cooperation, she'll be released in 2043 at the age of 63. In early 2024, a jury found Abel guilty of the same charge, and he received the maximum sentence of life without parole. During his sentencing hearing, he tearfully claimed that Arajo had flown into a rage after he proposed to Seiden with a ring pop, but the story failed to garner any last-minute sympathy from the judge, who said he wished he could impose a harsher punishment. Number 13. Iran Danielle Little. In early 2021, 30-year-old Iran Danielle Little was found murdered in a wooded area in rural Ovette, Mississippi. She had been shot in the face and buried in a shallow grave next to a pond. Little's family had reported her missing 2 weeks earlier, after being unable to reach her for several weeks. The victim had a history of arrests and addiction, but her murder shocked her loved ones, who struggled to understand why someone would want to kill the troubled woman. In what appeared to be a throuple relationship gone wrong, investigators traced the crime to Little's romantic partners, 36-year-old David DJ Pepper and 37-year-old Daphne Nicole Shelby. The suspects were charged with first-degree murder and maintained their innocence until days before their scheduled trials. During the summer of 2022, Pepper struck a last-minute deal with prosecutors and pleaded guilty to manslaughter and a gun charge for being a felon in possession of a weapon. He was sentenced to 18 years in prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. Shelby, who helped cover up the crime, received an 8-year prison sentence plus 2 years of probation for being an accessory after the fact and methamphetamine possession. According to Pepper's version of events, he shot Little in self-defense when she charged at him with a knife. During a previous fight, Little had sent someone text messages saying that Pepper had put his hands on her and that she wanted to blow his brains out. While prosecutors didn't necessarily agree that Pepper had acted in self-defense, they knew that this evidence stood to raise reasonable doubt among jurors, knowing they faced an uphill battle with proving a first-degree murder charge and wanting to spare Little's family from going through a trial. They agreed that the plea deal was in everyone's best interests. Little's loved ones said they were satisfied with the deal, which enabled them to gain some closure while ensuring that the culprits won't have the opportunity to harm anyone else for a very long time. Number 12. Manos Echidis. In June of 2017, 24-year-old Christopher Membreno received a call from his girlfriend, who claimed that she was being assaulted by a man at an apartment in Brooklyn's Gravesend neighborhood. Armed with baseball bats, Membreno and 2 friends rushed over to the residence, where they beat and stabbed 20-year-old Manos Echidis. Surveillance footage showed the 3 suspects chasing after Echidis before fleeing the scene. After the attack, Echidis knocked on a neighbor's door and collapsed into her apartment while begging for medical help. He died from his injuries, and Membreno was charged in connection with the case. Prosecutors denied Membreno's girlfriend's assault story, claiming that the woman had engaged in consensual intimacy with Echidis and another man. According to authorities, she became angry when one of the participants took out a camera and tried filming the encounter. By the time Membreno and his accomplices arrived at the apartment, his girlfriend and one of the men had left, and Iconomidis was there alone. Membreno claimed that he had acted in self-defense against the victim, but the evidence at the scene showed no signs of Iconomidis being the aggressor. Furthermore, the victim's girlfriend, who was not involved in the deadly three-way, had received text messages prior to the incident stating that Iconomidis was going to be taken care of. When Membreno learned that police had found no evidence of the encounter being non-consensual, he concluded that his girlfriend had lied to him despite her continued claims that she had been assaulted. During a tearful jailhouse interview with the New York Daily News shortly after his arrest, he acknowledged that he had thrown his entire life away over a lie. Records show that Membreno was convicted of first-degree manslaughter. He's serving a 17-year sentence at the notorious Attica prison in upstate New York and will become eligible for parole in 2031. Number 11. Timothy Smith. In March of 2016, police responded to a car accident in the English town of Shepshed, where a Ford Focus had crashed into a wall. Upon arriving at the scene at around 9 p.m., emergency responders found the body of 45-year-old Timothy Smith, a forklift instructor who lived about a half-hour's drive away. Witnesses reported seeing two men fleeing from the area around the time of the car wreck, and an autopsy found that Smith had died from a stab wound to the heart, making it clear that foul play was involved. Further investigation revealed that Smith had connected with a 20-year-old man named Mark Law on a dating app shortly before the murder. According to police, Law had offered Smith a threesome with him and another young man named Mason Casey. Smith picked up the two strangers who directed him to a seemingly empty parking lot in the area. Less than a half hour later, Law plunged a hunting knife into Smith's chest, then fled the scene with Casey, throwing the murder weapon into a pond along the way. Smith tried driving away from the scene, but lost control of his car due to his injuries and crashed. Following the suspect's capture, Law confessed to stabbing Smith. Casey denied any involvement in the crime or prior knowledge of Law's plans, claiming he had stepped out of Smith's car to tie his shoes when the stabbing occurred. Prior to the incident, Law had reportedly expressed an interest in cannibalism, and he and Casey had previously discussed killing another man from the same dating app. Casey claimed that he thought his friend was all talk, even though he had accompanied Law to the planned meeting. The man never showed, later telling police that he decided not to go after Law made some concerning remarks that made him feel unsafe. Law's motives and intentions may never be known. Some of this information may have been revealed if the case had gone to trial, but he avoided public scrutiny by pleading guilty to Smith's murder. He was sentenced to life with a minimum of 19 years, while Casey received a life sentence with a minimum of 15 years for the same charge. Number 10. Carrie, Hammond, and Heidi Kathleen Carter. In October of 2021, 36-year-old Heidi Kathleen Carter invited a couple she had connected with online over to her Evansville, Indiana home for a three-way encounter. She failed to mention the meeting to her boyfriend, Carrie Hammond, who arrived home during the drug and alcohol-fueled tryst and walked in on the action. Hammond flew into a rage and attacked the visiting couple, 50-year-old Timothy Scott Ivy and Amanda Seaby, with a baseball bat. He bound them with duct tape and continued to beat and abuse them for hours before strangling Ivy to death with a belt. For trying to escape his restraints, Hammond and Carter wrapped Ivy's body and stuffed it into a couch while continuing to hold Seaby captive. A short while later, a hired housekeeper discovered Ivy's body and immediately fled the house in a terrified panic. Police responded to the scene and tried coaxing Hammond outside. As the standoff lasted into the night, Hammond refused to surrender and exited the house brandishing a selfie stick that had been twisted into the shape of a gun. Believing it was a real firearm, officers opened fire on the suspect, killing him at the scene. Seaby survived the ordeal and Carter was charged in connection with the murder and kidnapping after detectives determined that she had helped Hammond hold the victims captive and had participated in the abuse. The first trial ended in a hung jury, resulting in a mistrial. Prosecutors retried the case in March of 2023 and the jury found Carter guilty of 6 charges, including aiding, inducing or causing murder, and 3 counts of criminal confinement. She was sentenced to 65 years in prison with an earliest possible release date of September 2070. Number 9. DeAndre Carrell. 31-year-old PhD student DeAndre Carrell vanished on the July 4th holiday in 2024 while visiting family in Birmingham, Alabama with his boyfriend, 31-year-old Julian Taylor Morris. 2 days later, he was found murdered in an abandoned shed near the home of his sister, 35-year-old Angelica Harris. While officials have released few details surrounding the case and no arrests have been made, Morris was quickly named as a person of interest. Harris told People magazine that her brother and Morris were in a throuple relationship with a man named DeAndre Carrell, who was unable to attend the holiday visit. Carrell and Carrell had been together for 14 years and had met Morris in 2021. The trio lived in Atlanta and worked together as a dance group called Ski Boys Entertainment, which had a large social media following. On the night Carrell vanished, he went inside his sister's house to check on his dog. While the family waited in the yard for fireworks to begin, he never came back outside, and Morris reportedly claimed that Carrell had jumped out a window and vanished. When Harris noticed that all her windows were closed and challenged Morris's story, he reportedly said that Carrell had actually jumped off the patio rather than through a window. Harris also claimed that Morris stayed at the house and ate while everyone else began searching for her brother. Surveillance footage from the night of the murder showed Carrell walking through someone's yard. He was alone and seemed calm, only furthering the mystery surrounding his death. When Carrell learned that Carrell was missing, he immediately traveled to Birmingham to help with the search. By the time he arrived, Morris had already left. In a statement to Fox 5, Morris's lawyer highlighted his client's clean legal record, describing Morris as grief-stricken and denying that he had any involvement in the crime. At his attorney's urging, Morris has declined to speak to both reporters and law enforcement. He remains a person of interest in the case, but has not been officially named as a suspect and continues to maintain his innocence. Number 8. Lisa Lyons, Zachariah Bruckner, and Letitia Fortune. Australian lovers Lisa Lyons, Zachariah Bruckner, and Letitia Fortune are accused of trying to kill Lyons' former partner, Jonathan Horton, on various occasions over a 5-year period starting in 2017. During the first alleged murder attempt, Zachariah Bruckner reportedly attacked Horton with an axe at the victim's Adelaide Hills home, then in an attempt to make the incident look like a case of self-defense. Horton survived, but was left paralyzed from the neck down from injuries sustained during the attack. Believing Bruckner was the victim, authorities charged Horton with attempted murder. He was acquitted at trial. In 2019, and investigators realized he was the victim after discovering continued plans among Lyons, Bruckner, and Fortune to murder him. Following the first botched homicide attempt, Lisa Lyons and Letitia Fortune allegedly plotted to sneak into Horton's hospital room on New Year's Day when they believed there would be less security and smother him to death with a pillow. They were reportedly thwarted by security. In 2021 and 2022, police say that Lyons and Bruckner conspired to hire a hitman to kill Horton and his mother. Undercover investigators prevented this from happening, but no arrests came until late 2023, when Lyons was apprehended in the small island nation of Palau. Bruckner was also arrested, and the pair are facing charges of attempted murder and conspiracy, while Fortune is facing an attempted murder charge. Fortune is free on bail while Lyons and Bruckner remain in custody amid the ongoing case. Following their arrests, Horton said that he and Lyons had broken up prior to the first attempt on his life and that he was unaware of her new relationships. Authorities have yet to reveal an alleged motive for the crimes. In the early hours of March the 22nd of 2021, Oklahoma woman Christy Evans called 911 to report that her husband, 50-year-old David, had been shot dead as he slept in their Ada home. In the hours leading up to his murder, David, the pastor of Harmony Free Will Baptist Church, had preached about attacks from the devil. During the sermon, he repeatedly said, "If the devil is attacking you, there is a reason." Christy initially told investigators that she hadn't seen anything on the night of her husband's murder and that she'd only heard a gunshot. On March the 25th, during her 5th interview with agents from the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, Christy admitted that she'd begged her lover to kill her husband. David and Christy had routinely had relations with Khalil Square, a man in his mid-20s. The throuple had first been intimate in January of 2021, and Khalil continued exchanging messages with Christy without her husband's knowledge. Khalil met with the woman at her home for 3 days in mid-March while her husband was away on a mission trip to Mexico. It was then that she pleaded with him to kill David. Christy left one of her husband's guns outside the house for him and unlocked the back door to give him access to the home. On the night of the shooting, she'd heard noises in the house and found Khalil clad in all black and nervously hiding in the dining room. Christy reportedly assured him that David was sound asleep. Khalil then gunned down the pastor and fled the home. As the investigation into the incident progressed, more details about David and Christy's private life emerged. David reportedly exercised coercive control over his spouse that involved him manipulating and verbally abusing her. He'd allegedly pressured the woman into having relations with anywhere from 50 to 100 men, mainly at rented rooms in Moore, Norman, and Oklahoma City. Christy resented the lifestyle and wanted to be free from her husband's control, which is why she sought Khalil's help. They both pleaded guilty to the murder plot in 2022 and were consequently given life sentences. Number 5. Rael Casas. The sheriff's office in St. Clair County, Michigan, received a call shortly before 4 a.m. on June the 6th of 2023 from a Capac man reporting that an assault had occurred in his home. Responding officers found an unnamed 44-year-old woman unresponsive at the address. She was taken to McLaren Hospital in Lay Pier, where she was pronounced dead 2 days later, and doctors determined she'd suffered fatal head trauma. The woman in question and the male caller had been in a throuple with 44-year-old Rael Casas. In the week leading up to the woman's death, Casas had posted a photo of them on social media in which both were shown smiling with black eyes, cuts and bruises to their faces. Casas had captioned the photo, "My best friend." When asked about what had happened, she replied, "We were fighting. I took her boyfriend." The women had an ongoing conflict over the shared relationship, and they'd been involved in a physical altercation from which the victim never awoke. In the aftermath, Casas was arrested and charged with open murder. According to updates on the matter, she'd been arraigned and denied bond, and she remained incarcerated at the St. Clair County Detention and Intervention Center. Number 4. David Cole. In the fall of 2022, a 38-year-old former police officer from Australia launched a lawsuit against New South Wales police alleging he'd been discriminated against for being in a polyamorous relationship. David Cole and his chiropractor wife, Lauren, had gotten married in February of 2017. 2 years later, they became a throuple with the addition of Alana Dean. The Coles remained married while Dean, a pole dancing boxer, became a girlfriend to them both. Cole claimed that the attitude of his colleagues and superiors towards him changed drastically when NSW police found out that he was actively involved with 2 women. He allegedly experienced a fair degree of harassment and was removed from cases on which he'd previously been working. The added pressure resulted in David having an unspecified meltdown at work, and he was medically discharged from the force. He subsequently decided to take legal action against his former employer. Lauren reported that the harassment had had a severe impact on David's mental health as he struggled with regular activities which included having relations with her and their girlfriend. Updates on the matter indicated that the man's case was to be heard in the district court in early February of 2023. Number 3. Robert Chavez, Amanda Johnson, and Kelsey Cabrera, a former throuple from California, collectively faced over 100 years in prison in the spring of 2023 after they'd been charged with torture and abuse. 38-year-old Amanda Johnson and Kelsey Cabrera, aged 35, had previously been in a polyamorous relationship with Robert Chavez. The women and their 5 children, 4 girls and 1 boy, had lived with 41-year-old Chavez at a home on Coulter Way in Magalia for about a year while they were all under the same roof. Chavez was horrifically abusive. Johnson and Cabrera were charged for their involvement, but their degree of participation in his reign of terror against their children remained unclear. It reportedly involved the man shooting them with BB guns, beating them with whips and paddles, as well as punching and kicking them in their faces and bodies, in addition to forcing himself on them. Butte County District Attorney Mike Ramsey described the abuse in the house on Coulter Way was truly horrific and one of the worst cases his office had ever seen. The throuple pleaded guilty to a myriad of abuse charges in Butte County Court on April the 19th. Chavez pleaded guilty and in May of 2023 was sentenced to 4 consecutive life terms and 2 additional non-life counts. Johnson and Cabrera also pleaded guilty and each faced over 10 years in prison, with their sentencing scheduled for May the 24th. As always, thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and maybe it will be your video that we'll be doing next. Number 2. Danielle Rawlings. In November of 2016, Australian tradesman Danielle Rawlings was working aboard a cruise ship operated by the Miami-based Royal Caribbean Company. On the 13th, he met an 18-year-old woman on the dance floor at the ship's Dizzy's nightclub. They had relations and the following night, Rawlings suggested that they invite another 18-year-old, only identified as Miss A, to join them in his cabin. After drinking copious amounts of alcohol at the club, the trio stumbled back to Rawlings' accommodations. The man's roommate, Matthew Champion, reportedly stormed out and said, "Not again," as the throuple became intimate. Rawlings pushed the 2 single beds together and had relations with the teens for several hours. The ship's security was called at around 5 a.m. after Miss A was found naked in another guest room. She reportedly told a guard, "I don't know what happened. All I know is I am dancing in Dizzy's and I'm looking for a bathroom." It was deemed that her level of intoxication had left her unable to consent to intercourse and thus considered she'd been assaulted by Rawlings. The teen's mother became furious and threatened to throw Rawlings overboard when he emerged from his cabin. He was consequently locked in his cabin for 5 days by the captain. Rawlings denied any wrongdoing and was never charged over the alleged assault. The other teen involved in their tryst claimed that Miss A knew exactly what she was doing and maintained that the relations had been consensual. Rawlings was awarded nearly $100,000 in 2020 after suing Royal Caribbean for detaining him in the cabin, claiming it was inhumane and akin to solitary confinement. However, the judgment was overturned on appeal in favor of the company, after it was deemed that locking him up had been for his protection from the teen's mother and that his mistreatment had been an exaggeration. He was ordered to cover both his and the company's legal costs, amounting to a bill of nearly $500,000. Number 1. Eric Ryan Hale and Shawn Peter Hale. 28-year-old British twins Eric Ryan Hale and Shawn Peter Hale were in a throuple with an unnamed 27-year-old woman, but the relationship turned violent in the winter of 2012. The woman was intimate with each of them, depending on who she chooses to be with that particular day. The trio was at a Manchester hotel on New Year's Eve 2012, and Shawn asked Eric to leave the room so that he could have relations with their girlfriend. The latter refused and a physical altercation ensued. The brothers grappled and repeatedly took swings at each other, destroying the hotel room in the process. They were subsequently arrested at a residence in Ellington. The brothers were charged with single counts of disorderly conduct and third-degree criminal mischief, with Eric additionally being charged with third-degree assault. Thanks for watching.